Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, April 18th, 2018. Does that mean today is finally tax day, or did they decide yesterday was tax day? Yes, that's right. Yesterday was tax day. If you haven't filed yet, you're late. Don't worry about it. Still time to run for president, and no point in worrying about it too much. Yes, that's the long and short of it. The president's tax return is still not out there. Somehow unable to find a way to move the IRS along on this routine audit. Nothing to see here. And still waiting on that one. Taxes are on the mind this morning. Ivanka Trump on a tour of I don't know where the hell she is, giving speeches about how fantastic the new tax system is, except that there is no new tax system. So instead they're going with the message of next year it's going to be really easy. Looking forward, as it were, to next year, when we'll be able to see everybody filing their tax returns on a simple postcard, and you'll all be relaxing and enjoying the fantastic new system, not that broken down stupid one that we currently administer that wasn't accepting electronic returns yesterday, but a stupid one that won't accept them next year. That's basically where we stand. Of course, I saw it this morning. I saw that Donald Trump had retweeted Ivanka's enthusiastic support for next year being totally awesome for tax filing, and I figured that was going to be next year's There's Always a tweet. But Bill in Portland, Maine found one that we should have been sharing this year. It was, as you might have guessed, something from last year. Ivanka Trump tweeting about how great it was going to be and how she was looking forward next year to talking to people about how easy it has been to file your taxes on a postcard this year, meaning like yesterday. So did you do it? Did you file on a postcard? If you did, I think you might be in trouble because you probably have to you could file the EZ form, which of course is another way of saying that being able to file on a postcard is something that's already available to you, but never mind all of that anyway. No one knows what they're going to screw up next year. We'll have to just wait and see, I guess, and enjoy what they destroy for us in the coming year. And hopefully it's limited to the tax filing system. That would actually be a fantastic year if we were able to count it that way. So we're ready to roll. Daily Kos Radio is live now. Bill also reminds us with his morning tweet, this is truly amazing. He says, Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, will do his entire 2-hour show on a postcard. I know you've been looking forward to that. And I think I can make the whole thing fit on a postcard. Basically, it just says, we don't know what happened. and on the back, it says, see front. Essentially, that's all there is to it. Lots of chatter this morning in my tweet stream. At least 3 people making the observation that Donald Trump's morning doesn't even really rise to the level of a rage tweet, but his morning blather about Stormy Daniels having insisted that she was intimidated, threatened by a Trump operative at some point during her dispute with the man. Oh, look, everything's coming loose on my microphone here. Tightening things up. Get rid of this rattling noise. That she finally produced a composite sketch of the person that she says threatened her. And it became an instant internet meme, both right and left, making fun of the idea that the sketch was going to net anybody in particular. And the instant meme was to put the sketch side by side first with people that looked like they might reasonably be implicated by that, but that were celebrities in their own right. And then secondarily with any number of jokey side by side comparisons. But Trump is, semi on the warpath today. I guess he's in Florida, so he's somewhat more relaxed. And says, the whole thing's phony and a non-existent guy, et cetera, et cetera. So he's going on and on about that, but at least 3 people have noted to me. So of course, we're all on the same page here, right? If Trump denies that it happened and says it's a phony story and the guy is non-existent, that's confirmation. That's essentially an admission for Donald Trump. So do pocket that, but thanks for everybody weighing in on that one, because it occurred to me too, and probably the rest of America. So you're mentally quite healthy, I would say, at this point. Unlike the woman who was apparently stopped at CIA headquarters, I don't know whether it was this morning or yesterday morning, but being reported on the local news here so far, WTOP, the Washington, D.C. area news. If you're going to show up at CIA headquarters, I guess do it wearing a wig, carrying $100,000 in cash. I would say maybe leave the loaded pistol at home. But points for honesty. Apparently stopped at the gate. She was asked if she was carrying anything illegal, and she said, yes, I am, and started to reach for her purse. And the police stopped her there. And, well, actually, she wasn't speaking. She was writing everything down, just handing notes, which was, I guess, the first inkling that it was suspicious. Second behind the blonde wig, I guess. But honesty, points for honesty. The police asked her, what are you reaching for in your purse? Would you write that down for me? And she dutifully wrote gun. So easy collar, I guess. But, I guess worth pointing out, didn't feel the need to shoot her. So I guess that's good news. A step ahead. We'll wait and see whether the blonde wig was a giveaway on the race or not. But anytime there's not shooting is a good start to the day. Greg Dworkin is here. That's my first favorite way of starting the day. No shooting. I made my second because I like to keep things realistic, and we know what's going to happen day to day. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
So far, so good. No shooting here. I don't hear any in the background there, so I
That's
counted a good day.
I was going to talk today, and maybe I still will, a lot about procedure stuff.
Okay.
I love to talk about that with you because you actually know what you're talking about, as opposed to me, who just reads it.
We will see.
But before we do that, since you brought up the purse and what was in it issue,
okay.
I'm just noticing, looking at my Twitter feed, not too different than yours. And
right.
I have even an article about this by Josh Krashour. But Twitter says Republicans are going to run this year on the 3 I's.
3 I's?
Yeah,
right.
Immigration, impeachment, and insurrection.
Insurrection? That's a new
Well,
one.
that's the gun rights stuff. I have to fit it in to make it an I.
I see.
Because you need to keep your guns just in case there's a race war.
Like true, or any kind of war, but that seems to be their favorite.
In other words, they're going to run on culture issues, as they always do.
Yes, that's good. Now, gun culture, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. What's gun culture? Race war. Okay, gotcha.
Well, there are parts of the internet who say that. Not everybody who owns a gun or
I word.
To be part of gun culture is part of that. Let's stipulate that, but, it's out there. And political scientist Adam Schiffer notes that, that kind of stuff works when the Republicans are having a good year, and it doesn't work when it's not a good year for them.
Okay. Well,
and right now, it's not a particularly good year for them. As a matter of fact, what do you do when it's not a good year for you?
You wait.
You do things to try to change it. Some of them are power plays. Some of them are just strategery. And it's always interesting watching people maneuver. For example,
all right.
Here's this one from The Hill. House consumed by leadership races, both sides of the aisle, by Scott Wong.
All right, Scott.
Right?
Yep.
Within the first few months of the year, we're filled with legislative fights over immigration, guns. Hey,
guns.
That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yes.
And government spending. The last few weeks have been dominated by palace intrigue. So now you have on the Republican side, for example, Paul Ryan sitting down, and then Kevin McCarthy, who seems to be the heir apparent, wants to succeed him. But Steve Scalise is still running, and so is Jim Jordan. And the Freedom Caucus has enough people so that they can actually, kind of have a big say as to who the next Republican leader is. Whether they're speaker or not depends upon how they do in November, and that's part of the deal here. For example, Scott Wong, who follows Congress for The Hill, writes, during the California GOP delegation meet yesterday, one lawmaker told Kevin McCarthy that all 13 other members of the group are backing his bid for speaker.
That must have felt nice for him.
Right?
Okay.
So
then he
Billy
was
Cat
lying.
asked Scott on Twitter.
Yeah.
Not sure what difference that makes, since most of them will be gone after November. And Scott
Right.
says, well, that's one of the reasons why McCarthy's pushing for a vote now.
Yes. That's a
Because
good point.
after November, chances are the Freedom Caucus are the ones who are going to survive, given what districts they're in. And they'll have even more power.
Yeah.
So if you want to get elected, it makes sense for McCarthy to have the election now and not later. Yes?
It does for him. We'll see whether anybody else wants to do that.
Right. I mean, he doesn't get to decide when to run or when the election is. But if we're up to him, I would think he'd want it tomorrow.
Yeah, I guess so. Really, any day that you haven't been indicted yet would be a good one.
Right. Other maneuvers that the GOP is doing to try to, work out things. This one's state level. GOP-controlled Arizona legislature moves to change rules for replacing McCain.
I see.
The Republican-controlled Arizona legislature is moving to ensure that ailing John McCain's seat isn't on the November ballot if he leaves office, although Democrats will probably block that effort.
Oh.
The state Senate put an emergency clause on a bill changing how members of Congress who die or resign are replaced.
All right.
Generally, vacancies are filled by governor appointee with a seat on the next general election ballot. The Secretary of State has interpreted that to mean that if McCain's seat is vacated by May 31st, we don't have to say how, it would be on the August primary November general election ballot. But the new proposal changes that to 150 days before the primary, or March 31st of this year, which takes McCain's seat out of play. So they're trying to make it easy to appoint somebody to 2.5 years without an election, says the Democrats there. And the thing is, we're all going to vote against it as Democrats, so they won't get it. But it's just jockeying to try to,
I get you.
Make things the way they are.
Yes.
Our friend Hyperplanes, by the way, notes my 3 eyes thing and says we're going to start seeing some sovereign citizen rhetoric creep into Republican discussions, because what they're trying to do, and this is where the Josh Krashour article comes in, how Democrats could squander their advantage. Remember, Josh is almost always wrong, but at least he looks at things from a conservative perspective, so we who don't think that way get an idea of what they're thinking.
Yes. Wrongly.
Right? But at least we get an idea. The GOP's best hope for salvaging their congressional majorities is hoping the base turns out. Democrats are worried their activists could make the GOP's challenge easier. That's actually a fair point, because if you talk to the Tim Kaines of the world, they'll say, ixnay on the impeachment talk.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say, what are you trying to hide by saying ixnay? If you don't use the rest of the sentence that way, it doesn't, but, I get the point. Yeah, people like that do say that. Hooray.
Right. So Josh points out the difference between the NBC poll and the ABC poll. The NBC News Wall Street Journal survey shows Trump with a middling 39%, Democrats with a 7-point advantage on the congressional ballot. ABC, on the other hand, has a higher Trump number and also a much tighter generic congressional ballot. Like its counterpart, the survey wasn't positive for the president. I mean, 40% is not great shakes, but among registered voters, an equal percentage of Republican and Democrats in the ABC poll said that they were certain to vote, ABC Washington Post, and the closing of the intensity gap gave Democrats just a 4-point advantage. So Josh writes, the difference in the poll's findings isn't trivial. It shows how essential turning out the base is for Republicans if they want to salvage what's going on here. All right. So polling aside, it's a safer bet to expect Democrats to maintain the enthusiasm edge, but then he talks about how this could work. Take the issue of guns, where the broader politics has been moving in the Democrats' direction since Parkland. 45% of Republicans said supporting a candidate who agrees with them on gun policy is extremely important, slightly higher share than the 43% of Democrats who are equally emboldened on the issue. That's a good number for Democrats, by the way. Despite all the sympathetic coverage, Republicans are now more fired up on the subject. The student activist strident attack against the NRA risks raising the ire of the opposition as much as it excites their already engaged supporters, demonstrating a paradox for Democrats. Progressive engagement is critical. Democrats don't really need to do much more to rally the base. Trump will do that. The bigger risk is the progressive energy forces candidates to take out of the mainstream positions on issues that will help Republicans turn out their voters. Now, I don't think he's quite right about that, but he's sort of right about that in the sense that, and I've argued with you and Armando about this for a long time. You're never going to convince these particular Republican-based voters to be on your side. That is not the question. We're not talking about persuading them. They are not the persuadables.
Yes.
But if you want to go out of your way not to poke them in the eye with a stick, that's okay. Let them be dispirited and stay home. You don't have to pick an issue that specifically is going to target them to get them to come out and vote against you.
Unless
It'll
you
be
use
all right to
dark
take
ads
that strategy.
to do it.
And we say that all the time. Let the candidates run to the middle. That's what that means.
Yes, I guess that's true. I do. Yeah, I was joking there. I guess you say, well, you can't poke them in the eye with a stick unless you do it with dark ads on Facebook. If they're still allowed, I suppose you can get away with doing that.
It's unclear. The thing is, what Josh is wrong about is that therefore, activists should therefore be quiet.
Yes, well,
that's nuts. That's not going to happen. We talk to our base. They talk to theirs. It's the centrist people, the actual candidates themselves, who have to watch their rhetoric, and that's okay. That's just part of growing up and learning how to run for office.
Yeah,
there's nothing major about that. Even candidate in a box candidates learn how to talk to voters, even if it's a stylized, simplistic way.
Yes. Well, it certainly has to be viewed as unrealistic as persuading deplorables of anything that you can just tell progressive activists, shut up and don't advocate for what you want. Okay. Yep. Yeah, that'll, right. So, okay, you want to be realistic. Neither of those two things likely to happen, and then roll the dice. Let's see where it goes.
It's not good advice on his part, but the concept of watching what's happening there is pretty reasonable. I mean, they are going to be running on cultural issues. In other words, they have nothing politically. They have no successes to run on. That's
true.
And they can't run on Trump because Trump is unpopular with the general public. We're not talking about Republican primaries here. So what are you going to do? So you're going to turn back to culture wars. This is just a foreshadowing of how the fall elections are going to go. It's going to be culture war all the time because that's all they got.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting.
So brace yourself and plan.
Yeah, I guess so. It won't change much of what Josh says, and pretty much even if it comes out entirely wrong for Josh, I assume we'll just say, I meant
the next.
2020 is what I meant that about. Just wait and see, because it is difficult to sit still for it, right? When that makes it, and that's part of what makes it difficult to sit still for being told, well, remember, you can't do anything that will rile the opposition's base. Although I do feel like they just won the presidency that way, and in odd fashion.
Wait, there's a difference between you can't do anything to rile. That's not true, but you can go out of your way not to. In other words, don't go out of your way to do it just for the sake of doing it.
Okay, even though that's kind of how they won. But now that's also, you should probably caution it by. You should also caution, right? Yeah, you can caution people by saying the same things don't necessarily work for both sides.
And the same things don't necessarily work every year.
That's true too.
Go ahead,
hopefully
let them run on
never
bathroom
works
bills.
again.
Let's see.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see whether they, in fact. I mean, there's plenty of rumors that they're going back to the same playbook, Facebook and all, and we're likely to just have it happen to us again and say, geez, that sucks. So I don't know. That's some people's prediction. Others think we'll probably be more hardened and ready for that sort of fake news type attack, and
also
that without
people
Trump
care about different things this year. And by the way, that all implies, which is another thing, that all implies that politics is static. Right, that Bobby Three Sticks doesn't have stuff to come up, that the Tom Hagen, Ray Donovan stuff that the Southern District of New York is pulling with Mike Cohen doesn't matter. But none of that's true. There's a lot of stuff that's going to come out of the Southern District of New York, and Robert Mueller has a lot more cards to play.
Yeah. Well, we will. You have no choice but to wait. Whether or not we see is yet to be determined. But we'll wait and wait. And then if we see things, great.
Other things that could happen. Trump could try to fire Rosenstein and Mueller.
Mm-hmm.
That's my next piece here. This is from the Lawfare blog. Procedural hurdles for the Mueller protection bills.
Oh.
So they're talking procedure here.
Yes.
Molly Reynolds is a fellow in governance studies at the Brookings Institute and studies Congress with an emphasis on how congressional rules and procedure affect domestic policy outcomes. I like that. That's kind of cool.
Okay.
Kind of an underlying theme of the show, sub-theme here. So,
Right.
with speculation about whether Trump will fire special counsel Robert Mueller continuing to swirl, do you have this particular?
I have it open
I put it right
now.
at the top.
Okay.
We've seen
Yes.
several developments related to legislation that will protect the special counsel. Now, I should add, because this was written before it happened, Mitch McConnell was just interviewed on Fox News and said he's not allowing any of the Judiciary Committee Charles Grassley bills to actually come up.
I see. Well, that is a hurdle, isn't it?
It is. So I think we should add that. But just in the House, just before the House went on its March
not
recess,
a
two
hurdle
Democrats,
there.
Sheila Jackson Lee and Steve Cohen, Texas and Tennessee respectively, filed separate discharge petitions in an attempt to bring legislation protecting Mueller to the House floor. Cohen's petition relates to H.R. 4669. Jackson Lee's is associated with 3654. Cohen's bill is similar to the proposal offered in the Senate by Tom Tillis and Chris Coons. Jackson Lee resembles the one authored by Lindsey Graham and Cory Booker. And, of course, Grassley's trying to consolidate them all in the Judiciary Committee. As Steve Leddick has noted, the bills differ in their particulars, but have the same basic structure in providing for judicial review of Mueller's firing.
Okay. That's the idea.
So after it's done, then you get to look at it. Adopted in its present form in 1931, the discharge rule provides a way for a numerical majority of House members to force a vote on a measure over the objections of various actors whose support is usually needed to get things on the floor. Committees of jurisdiction, like House Judiciary, the majority party leadership, and the Rules Committee. So how does that process work? If a bill's been sitting in committee for more than 30 legislative days, a member may initiate a discharge petition. Once it is signed by 218 House members, a motion to discharge the bill is placed on the House discharge calendar. After it sits for 7 legislative days on the discharge calendar, any supporter can move to bring up the motion to discharge on the floor, but only on the second or fourth Monday of the month. Yes, really, that's what it says.
Yeah. All right.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, back in the days when they were very much more structured in what you could do on certain days, and a lot of obsolete procedure has got rules like that.
Well, the obsolete is sometimes interesting and fascinating.
Yeah,
Once
bring
we
it up from
discover
time to time.
We study history here.
The discharge petition is used a lot more often of late, and not successfully, but it is used a lot more often. They never changed the rules because they rarely succeed, so there was no point in doing it. And back in 1931, that's how they did things. Well, we'll consider discharge petitions on Mondays and corrections on Wednesdays, and that it's no longer done that way. That's the obsolete part.
The fact that there are infrequent opportunities is only one of several reasons that discharge petitions are rarely successful. In a 2013 analysis, my Brookings colleague Sarah Binder found that fewer than 2% of measures targeted by discharge petitions passed the House between 1947 and 2013.
Yes, okay.
So even using a more generous standard, cases in which the House majority party brings up its own version, only 9% were successful. So high-profile exceptions exist, including the Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act, also known as McCain-Feingold, and the 2015 legislation reauthorizing the Ex-Im Bank. These historical trends suggest the discharge petition rarely effective. So there's that problem.
Yes.
All right, I'll skip the next paragraph and say just
Just thought I'd
a
throw
second.
something
Oh,
in there.
too bad. Sad trombone.
Yes.
A second obstacle involves the fact that the discharge petitions have been filed on the special counsel legislation itself rather than on accompanying procedural resolutions. To understand why this is relevant, we need to take a brief detour through House floor procedure.
Brief. Yeah.
Right? This is like a whole
it can
brief
be
discussion
done.
here.
It can be done.
I just, I don't know anything about this, so I think it's really interesting. Most major bills that come up for consideration in the House do so under what's called special rule, developed by the House Rules Committee. Each special rule outlines how long the associated piece of legislation will be debated for, which amendments will be eligible, other terms of debate. When the House is preparing to consider a bill, it first debates and votes on the rule. If the rule is adopted, then the chamber proceeds to deliberate on the bill itself. Sometimes the action there, by the way, is actually on the vote on the rule, not on the bill.
Yeah, right.
Because once the rule passed, the bill follows. And the rule, is really where you see where your strength is sometimes. So this two-step process for considering bills on the House floor creates a second way that the discharge process can be used. Rather than discharging the committee responsible for the bill, a measure supporters can introduce a special rule relating to the legislation they're seeking to move and use a discharge petition to force the rule out of the Rules Committee.
Yes.
Does that happen? That happened with the Export-Import Bank.
Yes, they get filed that way from time to time, and it depends on essentially A, how serious you are, and B, do you know that trick? But yeah, that's a good way to sort of short-circuit things, discharge a rule, and block the Rules Committee from being used by the leadership to bury a discharged bill. Rebury. So
basically, it's a way to get it out of committee.
Yeah.
Suppose a discharge petition is nearing 218 signatures. The committee handling the bill might go ahead and report it out, even if it opposes it. Quote, for once the committee no longer has the measure in its possession, it can no longer be discharged.
Ta-da. It's a good technicality.
Yeah. Once the bill has come out of committee under the regular process, it's unlikely to reach the floor without the support of leadership. But at this point, discharge proponents could still introduce a special rule related to the bill and try to discharge that from the Rules Committee.
Yes.
But that requires another round of signatures and 7 legislative waiting days.
Yep.
Right? So all of that. So that's how it works in the House.
Yes.
Then there's the Senate.
Yeah. And we could take 2 minutes or so to absorb that and then come back to the Senate. But that's a very good and relatively brief explanation of the hurdles of the discharge petition in the House and how to get around them. I mean, there's still hurdles, but the discharging a rule is a great way to short circuit the leadership's usual trick of saying, okay, fine, it's out of committee. We're just not bringing it to the floor. So force a rule and you can force it out and force a vote there that way. No indication that they're ready to do that yet, but maybe they'll read this today and file one.
Yeah.
I hope so. All right, well, we'll be back in 2 minutes and we'll get to the rest of these hurdles.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We are still with Greg Dworkin and moving now in the break over to the other side of the legislative branch to figure out what are the hurdles on the Senate side to propose legislation to protect Robert Mueller himself and I guess the investigation as well from a rampage of firings by Donald Trump or anyone else for that matter. So lots of hurdles on the House side now explained. They don't go away, but at least we know our way around them if possible. Still a lot of high hurdles, though.
Right. And now we'll look at the Senate. But I have to say I'm already pleasantly surprised because Rob Rosenstein hasn't been fired yet. I figured he'd be fired by Monday.
Well, we had this break there, and there was every opportunity. Trump doesn't type that quickly with his thumbs, so we'll wait 5 minutes and see.
Right. On the Senate side, meanwhile, reports indicate that the Senate Judiciary Committee may consider a measure related to the special counsel that represents a merger of the separate Tillis-Coons and Graham Booker proposals. By the way, as we talk about this procedure, it's actually a little bit less arcane and, frankly, a little less interesting. This is more power politics. And the gist of the Senate discussion here is actually a list of the senators who might support such a thing, which is really kind of fascinating. All 4 of these senators sit on the Judiciary panel, Tillis, Coons, Graham, and Booker. The committee held a hearing on the constitutionality of the respective measures in September, and the drafting of a compromised version represents an important step forward. The Senate bill has encountered timing obstacles of its own, brought on in part by relevant rules. In this case, those of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Chuck Grassley, the chair, wanted to consider the measure last week, but ranking minority member Dianne Feinstein would have needed to sign off on that change in the agenda, which reports indicate she didn't want to do. I don't know why. Grassley next floated the idea of addressing the bill on Thursday, April 19th, but committee rules allow any member to request a 1-week delay in the consideration of an agenda item. So given lingering partisan conflict over the bill's content, including between Grassley and Feinstein, consideration has now been pushed back one additional week until April 26. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you got to fight to get the procedure rules to get it on the calendar properly. And I guess there's some minor delaying tactics that even non-ranking members can do. Yes. But for a week or so at a time.
Right.
So committee scheduling aside, even if Judiciary reports out a compromise version, senators would still need to convince Mitch McConnell to schedule the bill for floor consideration, and he's already said he won't. He says there's no need, just like Paul Ryan says there's no need. That might change if Mueller actually gets fired. So it's a marker. And one of the other reasons to consider Mitch McConnell one of the worst people in the United States, this and blocking Neil Gorsuch are probably, the two worst possible things for a democracy that somebody in the Senate could do, and he's done both. But, things could change if there's actually a firing. Politico recently reported that 8 Senate Republicans are already supportive or considering getting behind efforts to protect the special counsel. They are Tillis, Graham, Grassley, Murkowski, Corker, Moran, Flake, and Collins. Moran always surprises me from Kansas. Sometimes, he did on healthcare discussions as well.
Okay.
If all 8 of these senators plus all 49 Democrats are on board, and I know the Republicans, I know Susan Collins. I'm not saying that you can count on them. It's just interesting that that's the list. If all 8 of these senators plus all 49 Democrats are on board, there would leave supporters 3 votes shy of the 60 necessary to overcome the threat of a filibuster. Now, given that Ryan has said he doesn't think it's necessary, and given that McConnell doesn't think he's necessary, that's a good excuse to blame the other house. Because remember, we were talking in the House about how you deal with the opposition, but now we're talking about the Senate, which of course is the enemy. And so, everybody's going to say it's the other person's fault.
Yes.
Ryan refuses to consider a bill unless he knows the Senate will approve it. McConnell refuses to bring up one unless there's evidence the House will.
The old catch-22, yeah.
That's happened on more than one occasion.
True.
So, while optimism about the legislation isn't warranted, sustained congressional attention and a willingness to use procedural tools may be a step in the right direction for those seeking to actually protect the special counsel. So I thought it was an interesting article in that regard.
Yes, I would say so, and a great, relatively compact and I think understandable, but I don't know whether I'm a good test subject for that, explanation of the hurdles and reminder of what are the discharge rules, and also a good reminder, like, okay, suppose you think you have support for a discharge petition, what's the most efficient way of getting at it and not getting yourself trapped again? Discharge a rule. That's a good point.
Well, I learned that today, that there were 2 separate ways to do it, and I was reminded that it isn't just congressional jargon to talk about rules. You have to understand this whole thing about what rules are when they're talking about special rules or rules that are set up to pass legislation, because if you don't understand that, you don't understand what follows. Yeah. And you've talked about it enough on the show, so I have an idea. This is a pretty good explanation.
I think so, and it makes it easy sometimes. I guess when we're talking to computer people, certainly, or at least old time computer people, the way when they used to teach us to program, like for real, but in BASIC and things like that, or other programming languages, the computer is there. It's capable of doing all the things that a legislature does. Your legislative computer, you just have to program it right, and you can't just say, pass this bill. You have to write the instructions correctly. And at any point, if you screw it up, it gets derailed and the thing doesn't come through correctly. And then you got to go debug your program and figure out where it got undone and try again.
The problem is, at my age, I figure it was all written in Aramaic and I can't really read it. So,
It may as well have been. They don't read it now.
But there it goes. All right, let's change subjects a little bit.
They have people for that.
We could talk about good old Donald Trump's tweets this morning. You mentioned them. But when I did the pundit roundup, I was just trying to round up some stuff that happened between Monday and Wednesday. So Michael Cohen comes across as a crook who knows a lot, and Sean Hannity, a stooge who knows very little. That whole Hannity thing is kind of important. And by the way, did you know that Hannity actually also has interactions with 2 other Trump lawyers.
Yeah, I heard that yesterday.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little
Right,
bit.
although, it's also a question mark whether they're really Trump lawyers, but that's always the case, apparently, with his guys. So
Lots of Pulitzers awarded. And do you remember the Syria war? Was that like a year ago?
Syria. Yeah. It's,
what about the Russian sanctions? Remember those? They're gone.
Yeah. Well, they were on and then they're off again.
So Nikki Haley may be the latest Trump cabinet member to fail.
Yes. Reportedly, he holds her in high regard, so she's fired.
Right. So rumors of her leaving, and then after Trump gets canned, then she'll be Mike Pence's vice president.
Oh.
People are actually talking about that.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Republicans.
I mean Hannity was the third client. Anything can happen.
Right. Did you know that Mike Pompeo met with Kim Jong-un?
I did until I didn't because it was secret until yesterday, and I heard about that one. So score one for screw the confirmation process. You just go ahead and be Secretary of State or pretend to be. I don't know. I mean, I guess you can allow anybody in. If you're Kim Jong-un, I suppose it doesn't matter whether or not the guy's been confirmed if you feel like letting him in and you run your country as a dictator. Why he let the CIA director walk into North Korea, I have no idea. But
well, if Dennis Rodman could go, why can't the CIA
Right.
director?
I mean, at that point, why not Sean Hannity?
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be a secret.
He's the third guy who went.
He would bring cameras and all that sort of stuff.
Right. That's true. Well.
All right. So Rosie Gray has this piece in The Atlantic. Sean Hannity's ties to 2 more Trump-connected lawyers. The Fox News host denies that Michael Cohen was ever his lawyer, but Hannity was represented by a pair of legal advisors who also have close links to the president. And by the way, when we did the Monday show, I think we set it up pretty well for discovering later in the day that the third client was Sean Hannity. At least people, are getting a sense that this Michael Cohen stuff is important, which, by the way, it is. So Sean Hannity has no shortage of lawyers, but on May 25th, 2017, KFAQ, a radio station based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, received a cease and desist letter signed by 2 lawyers for Hannity, Victoria Tonsing and Jay Sekulow.
Okay. Sekulow, he I think is totally like contract signed and on board.
Right. Tonsing's signature sits above her name and that of her husband, Joseph DeGeneva, members of DeGeneva and Tonsing LLP, who were identified as counsel for Sean Hannity, according to a copy of the letter obtained by The Atlantic. Sekulow is also identified in the letter page as a counsel for Sean Hannity.
So 3 TV lawyers.
Right. Sekulow is now the only known personal attorney for President Trump working full-time on the response to Special Counsel Robert Mueller's inquiry. Sekulow recently announced that DeGeneva and Tonsing had been hired to join him before reversing course. The letter to the radio station was sent before Sekulow joined Trump's team.
Okay.
Right. The letter was sent in response to accusations against Hannity made by the controversial conservative activist Debbie Schlussel.
Oh, good. So this is an intra-party fight. Sort of, right? Yeah. Schlegel.
Yeah.
Strudel.
Well, during an appearance on the Pat Campbell Show on KFAQ.
Everyone's favorite.
By the way, just separately, this always fascinates me.
Yeah.
So the call letters for the radio stations west of the Mississippi start with K.
Yes.
And the call letters east of the Mississippi start with W.
Something like that.
Except for the one in Pittsburgh.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's one on the East Coast that actually is a K. I guess it was the original one or something. I have to go look that one up. Just one of those random things we have to go check on.
Weird.
So anyway, Schlussel said Hannity had been creepy towards her and invited her to his hotel room.
Okay.
Hannity responded at the time by calling the allegations 100% false and a complete fabrication and said that he had hired lawyers to plan a response.
Sure.
Was one of those Michael Cohen?
Maybe.
Because he had some stuff that he did with Cohen sort of off the record, but sort of kind of, mostly real estate. But what did he meant by mostly? This letter provides, because after all, that's what Michael Cohen does. He fixes things.
Mostly. Well,
mostly.
Not really, but all right.
And they don't always stay fixed, but Right. Anyway, that puts some background into the whole thing. Well, what was Hannity doing talking to Cohen in the first place? And as you always point out, it would be inappropriate. It would be wrong not to speculate. It would be irresponsible not to speculate.
Sean Hannity, I guess. I mean, basically, if he gets in legal trouble, I guess he's a wealthy guy. Yeah. I'm surprised that he doesn't have a battery of lawyers already, but he is a wealthy, dumb guy. And I didn't really factor that in there. But usually even wealthy, dumb guys get lawyers on board. What's amazing to me is that...
But normally you'd get it from work, but he can't use the Fox people because he doesn't want them to know about this.
I guess that's true. That's probably it. As he usually would probably use the company lawyers as his own, which is a huge mistake. But there you have it. I mean, you would think he would have, for instance, his own tax attorney who might very well say, "Yeah, don't use me for this, but I'll find you somebody who will handle this for you." But instead, he has people on the show who, well, eventually, yes, he has people on the show who are lawyers, and then he leans on them for free legal advice. Yeah, I mean, you're used to this as a doctor. You go to a party and people ask you to look at their elbow.
Do you want somebody to fix the problem, or do you want to just make it go away? Oh, you want to make it go away? I know this guy. I know a guy who knows a guy.
Well, there's the people that would do that. I mean, it's very Trumpian. Part of it is probably intentional. I know that Sean Hannity, I guess, sort of fantasizes about Donald Trump or being Donald Trump, or I don't know, being with Donald Trump in some fashion. And so wants to have the same lawyers, essentially. But I think just the parade of conservative lawyers who are only barely lawyers in many cases, who don't practice for real about anything, but they come through and he says, "Oh, I have a thing. I want to sue somebody. Will you do that for me?" And they say, "Well, I'll send a cease and desist letter. That's not much." And I don't know whether there's any real billing that goes on that would establish that it's a true lawyer-client relationship, but
they said so on the letter, so you got to assume that they in fact were his counsel because they said they were his counsel.
Yes,
you got to take that at face value for the time being.
Okay.
The bigger picture to me is why did he need lawyers and what was this whole thing about? And is this all part and parcel of the Bill O'Reilly style of how you run Fox News?
Yeah, and that didn't even sound like he needed them. It sounded like he wanted to threaten somebody.
Yeah, so the story goes on, and not a lot happened here. I don't want to make this sound like it was a Stormy Daniels kind of situation. It wasn't. It was just creepy.
It was.
But, Hannity responded at the time by calling the allegations 100% false, a complete fabrication, said that he hired lawyers to plan a response. The letter provides notice that Ms. Schlussel's statements, try to say that 3 times fast, with sushi in your mouth. Ms. Schlussel's statements are false and defamatory. Continued publication will result in further exposure to liability because of continued harm to Mr. Hannity's impeccable reputation.
Which one is that?
I don't know. Schlussel says she remembers that the radio station where she made the remarks had received the legal letter. She didn't remember who the lawyer was. Townsend acknowledged at that time she was acting as Hannity's lawyer, but wouldn't comment on whether she still represented him.
It was a one-night thing.
Right? I've just learned in the press, she said, that anybody who's Sean Hannity's lawyer is going to be blasted, so I think this phone call is over.
Well, you're right.
I'm wondering what attorney-client privilege means to anybody. I don't say who my clients are. Sometimes I do, and many times, most of the time, I don't. So I just read that and said, that was your lawyer?
Yeah, good job, by the way. Yeah,
good job clearing all that up.
There's they're taking so much about it being, I don't have to tell you who my clients are. Yeah, well, because you're not under order by the court.
Fine.
I mean, duh.
Okay. So maybe you're his lawyer, maybe not. You were, but now you're not. It's not clear whether you are or not. But here is really the next paragraph here.
Yes.
Sekulow, DeGeneva, and Townsend have frequently appeared on Hannity's program.
That's it.
DeGeneva appeared on the show as recently as Monday night. Asked for comment, Hannity sent a text consisting of newsbusters and Daily Caller links to stories about ethical misconduct in the mainstream media, and declined comment. I don't have time for these silly questions.
What about it?
The whole issue here is whether or not everybody knows that Sean Hannity's in the tank for Trump. That's a fair statement.
Sure.
So he's not misrepresenting himself if he's in the tank for Trump. He says he's not a journalist, except when he says he is. He says that everybody knows where he stands, and he can do whatever he wants on the show. And Fox says, well, we don't care. He brings in a lot of money. So from a journalistic perspective, I was watching Meet the Press Daily with Chuck Todd, Chuck doing a bunch of cell phones I'm shocked that Fox News will let this stand. Any other organization would fire the guy. I'm shocked. I know so many good journalists at Fox that they would let this happen. Well, of course they're going to let this happen. He's a moneymaker. Mm-hmm. He replaced O'Reilly as their biggest moneymaker, so of course they're going to say nothing. Well, actually, they said something. We support him. We didn't know about this, but we looked it over and we don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
So you have everybody else looking and saying, what? You had these people who represent you on the air blasting other folks, and you didn't tell anybody what that relationship was. Any good journalist is supposed to reveal what your biases are, because they're obviously clearly in play here. They're your lawyers. They're protecting you. You didn't want that raid on Michael Cohen's office because your name was in there. And you were blasting it not because you think it's going to hurt Donald Trump, but this is the accusation, that you were going to get hurt yourself because your name is tied up in this. So, of course, you were going to make this false story about how outraged you were. You were scared is what the real story is. I mean, none of that is covered by Sean Hannity or his comments or his responses. So actual news organizations are rather upset about this, and I don't think the end of that piece of it has happened yet. It's not like they have the power to do anything about it. But, the fact of the matter is the only resource, the only recourse that ordinary people have to deal with something like Sean Hannity and the propaganda that's known as Fox News, which is now exposed, the only recourse people have is to boycott his advertisers. It's the only way to make Fox do anything. It's the only way Bill O'Reilly got taken off the air.
Yeah.
It's the only way Laura Ingraham had to apologize.
True.
So when people talk about boycotts of sponsors, and you'll hear people on the right saying, gee, that's just un-American. Well, of course, it's totally American.
Yeah,
it's capital script, as we talked about the other day. But you know what? That's what you have to do, because you can't depend on Fox News to do anything. They're going to do nothing. They already have done nothing.
Yeah. Well, that's true, and don't depend on him finding ethical counsel either, so
exactly.
That's not going to help.
Anyway, it's a fascinating story, and you talked about how it's all like in-house in terms of these arguments between Schlussel and Hannity, and then it turns out that the lawyers are the same as the lawyers for Trump, which Hannity happens to cover nightly on his show. I thought of it more as like an incestuous relationship.
Oh, well.
Because everybody's related to everybody else here.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's a small network of lunatics who work together and log rolling, is essentially what's happening here. You appear on my show, I make you a famous attorney. Supposedly that's supposed to net you some business, but I guess because it doesn't, you're free to be my lawyer for free whenever I get into a fight with Debbie Schlussel or anybody else. By the way, I was thinking the tongue twister we ought to try is Schlussel sells sushi by the seashore, as you were saying. We're about halfway there. So we could try that one later. But yeah, I guess he just leans on his guests, whatever expertise they may claim to have. And hey, by the way, thanks for being on the program. And can you write me a cease and desist letter against K, whatever it was?
Right. And by the way, GTR is just starting a tweet storm. I can't read it to you because he's only on tweet number 2, and he usually goes like 37. But I'll bring it to your attention because he starts off by saying the Sean Hannity business illustrates paradoxical position of right-wing media in the age of Trump. More powerful than ever, but also more vulnerable to attack. Because they're so visible. I mean, you get to see this stuff, and then you get to puncture their bloviating claims to fairness and impartiality. By right-wing media, he says, I mean the outlets that both made Trump what he is and generally supported him, Fox, Breitbart, and Alex Jones. And they're all, under attack, even though they all are fairly successful in getting Trump to be president.
Yeah.
So that's a tweet storm that's worth following maybe later, just to see what he said. Maybe we'll cover it tomorrow. But with that,
send me a link.
I'm just going to quit.
Okay. Oh, well, that's easy. Then you'll have plenty of time to copy that link and send it to me. I'll follow along and see if there's any more installments to discuss along the way.
There it is at the bottom.
37.
And so take care, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
I will allow that as a judge. Thank you.
It's a special rule.
Yes, that's right. And let me just comment on how special it is. Greg, thanks very much. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and I will fumble forward from here. Is there anything, by the way? Sometimes it pays to scan the list and see whether there's anything that got sent but we didn't get around to. It's always a good source of stories. It looks like, yes, here's sort of a story we at least have to mention. And did we make some mention of it the other day? I think I just brought it up in terms of like, man, a bunch of terrible stories that came down on the same day. On the race relations in America front, I will no longer be surprising anybody or alerting anybody to the stories. Everyone knows about the story that came out of the Philadelphia area Starbucks, wherein two black patrons who were waiting for a friend, a business associate actually, who was to meet them at the Starbucks, were, what happened, long and short of it, is I think the manager of the Starbucks called the cops on them because two black guys were sitting in the store and they weren't ordering anything, which is usually, I don't know, I don't need to explain this to you. It's what happens. It's about what 60% of the store is doing at any given time. It's not ordering. Well, it's probably about 90% of the store not ordering at the time, but 60% are waiting for a friend to show up and they can have coffee together. That's what you do. You know, it's an outrage. But I bring it up only to bring you really the update. By the way, the other story that came down on the same day was the story of the school kid. It was the gun fail story, essentially. The school kid who missed the bus and knocked on a door near the bus stop asking for directions to school where he was going. I guess looking for a shortcut rather than walking the entire bus route. And, oh my God, white people live there, so they thought it was a robbery. Yeah, amazing situation we find ourselves in, of course. Today's update that Greg had queued up, but we didn't get to discuss here. The tweet from I.J. Bailey, a Harvard-Neiman interim member of the Charlotte Observer editorial board. First credential listed here in his profile. Former Davidson College Baton professor, also, I guess, commentator with CNN, Vice contributor, etc., making this point. The reaction from Starbucks, they'll be closing down the shops, I think all of them, for a day for bias training. And is that what we're talking about here? The notion that they can fix this sort of thing with a day's worth of implicit bias training. I think the police likely will be going through it too, but the big news is that the Starbucks employees will be doing it. So, big question mark. Somebody tweeted out, so would the black employees go to this, or do they get the day off, or what? It's a sort of a tongue-in-cheek question. Now, you could have, obviously, implicit bias in either direction, and it's probably worth noting that that can happen, and it would be, I think it would just make things worse if they said, all right, yeah, let's split this training up by race and see how that goes. But I don't know. Not certain what's going on. But I.J. Bailey here says, don't be fooled. Implicit bias training has no chance of working if it isn't deliberative, consistent, and tied to measurable goals. Pardon me. It's not something that can be dealt with sufficiently in a day-long series of sessions. No consistent follow-up, no change in behavior. Likely true. That, by the way, in response to DeRay McKesson's tweet on the same subject. I like the idea of trainings, and I think they can be beneficial, but the gesture is meaningless if the delivery mechanism is flawed. Then this just becomes another symbol of impact and not actually impact. Symbol of impact, not actually impact. Very true. Okay. Red hot flashing warnings from Armando that there's an article that he has on hand that absolutely must be read, and it's about Michael Cohen, and I guess we should get to it. I know of at least two articles that make some very weird allegations. We'll consider this one a must-read and try and cram the header of it in before our break. He also had a question about whatever happened to that balanced budget amendment situation in the House. We'll check in on that, hopefully with Joan McCarter in our second hour, and hopefully have a good laugh, and that it's, be able to announce that it's never going to happen. ProPublica, publishing this one, I guess, in coordination with WNYC. And what do we got? Trump Incorporated, the company Michael Cohen kept. Trump Incorporated podcast. I see. This is the ProPublica podcast tracking the various, some varying levels of illegal up to absolutely red hot, needs to be sent to prison for life, pursuits of the Trump business empire, such as it is, or what he likes to call the Trump business empire, but is in fact a crumbling series of racketeering half thoughts formulated by Trump together with Michael Cohen. Subheader here: long before Donald Trump's attorney paid Stormy Daniels or had his office raided by the FBI, the pattern was established. The associates of Michael Cohen have often been disciplined, not like self-disciplined, self-regulators, self-starters. No, they've been disciplined by the law, legal authorities, disbarred, accused, or convicted of crimes. And I'll bet that this one actually covers a lot of the other thing that I put aside here, but we are getting very close to the break. That can be just a teaser. We'll be back in a minute or so after we get to the rest of it. Let's see. By the way, they let you know that you can find the Trump Incorporated podcasts, helpfully telling you can find them wherever you get your podcasts. Where can I get your podcast? Wherever you get them. I know what they mean, but that's maybe something they want to look at tinkering with just a little bit. Anyway, if you've seen video or images of Michael Cohen, the piece begins, President Donald Trump's personal attorney, they've probably been set in locations that exude power and importance. And that's true, but probably in ways that he didn't anticipate, like courthouses where he's on trial. Cohen berating a CNN anchor in a TV studio, for example, or striding across the sleek marbled interior of Trump Tower, or more recently, smoking cigars in front of Cohen's temporary residence, the Loews Regency Hotel on Manhattan's Park Avenue. Why is that his temporary residence? I don't know if this article is going to explain it, but we're assured that it's hot stuff. We'll get to it after this short break. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. After our short break, we are back on the air here at Netroots Radio and sifting through this piece. Armando has sent me what he says is one of the highlights of the piece, and I know that there's been some writing about this. I think over a Talking Points memo. My guess is, though, that they may have been working off of this very same article, and this looks like it has all the juicy stuff in it. Let's get to it. And scroll down. Now, ProPublica pieces do tend to be rather long, so maybe we'll skip around a little bit. We'll try and get you the highlights and get that cleaned up sooner rather than later. But it looks like good background material. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about how you usually see Michael Cohen strutting around looking like he's an important and powerful guy. But to understand how Michael Cohen arrived in those precincts, precinct offices of the police in some cases, you need to venture across New York City's East River. There, in a Queens warehouse district, in the shadow of an elevated number 7 subway line, is a taxi garage, taxis, remember, that used to house his law practice. A taxi garage that used to house his very glamorous law practice. The office area in front is painted a garish taxicab yellow with posters of hockey players on the wall and a framed photo of the late Hasidic rabbi Menachem Schneerson. How about that? Cohen practiced law there and invested in the once lucrative medallions that grant New York cabs the right to operate. So if we're getting towards the story of how do he and Trump end up partnering, and part of the answer is they both started in the remote regions of Queens and elbowed their way to enough money to move across the river over to Manhattan and then pretend that they had been there the whole time, even though everyone could see you can't take the Queens out of this guy. Anyway, what else could you do to figure out where he came from? You could drive 45 minutes deep into Brooklyn, near where Gravesend turns into Brighton Beach, where the Russians are. There, in a desolate stretch near a shuttered podiatrist's office, you'll find a medical office, which is what a podiatrist's office is, but okay. Anyway, according to previously unexamined records, Cohen incorporated a business there in 2002, not that long ago, right, that was involved in large quantities of medical claims, which doesn't sound like they were legitimate, does it? Separately, he represented more than 100 plaintiffs who claimed they were injured in auto collisions. Okay, people do make their living that way, right? But how does he get from there to counselor to the president? At the same time, in Brooklyn and Long Island, New York prosecutors were investigating what Fortune magazine called possibly, quote, the largest organized insurance fraud ring in U.S. history. He likes to do things big. That fraud resulted in hundreds of criminal prosecutions for staging car accidents to collect insurance payments. Now we're getting somewhere. Cohen, you'll be surprised to know, was not implicated in the fraud. But why is it in here? Let's read on. A distinctive pattern emerged early in Cohen's career, according to an examination by WNYC and ProPublica. For the Trump Incorporated podcast, many of the people who crossed paths with Cohen when he worked in Queens and Brooklyn were disciplined, disbarred, accused, or even convicted of crimes. Cohen, 51, has always emerged unscathed. Until now. Last week, his Rockefeller Center office, much more highbrow, right? His Rockefeller Center office was raided by federal agents, as were his home, hotel room, safe deposit box, didn't know that, and 2 cell phones, which they probably found in the house. Cohen is under criminal investigation by federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. According to court papers, investigators are examining whether he committed fraud and showed a, quote, lack of truthfulness. Very often closely related to fraud. He and his attorneys, whoever they may be, did not respond to a lengthy set of questions emailed to them. Cohen's lawyers have stated that he has done nothing improper. Cohen has attained national attention as the man who paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 to keep her alleged affair with Trump secret. He also negotiated a $1.6 million settlement with a woman impregnated by Trump fundraiser Elliot Broidy. We talked a little about that yesterday. Cohen's attorney told the judge on Monday that his only 3 legal clients over the past 15 months were Trump, Broidy, and talk show host Sean Hannity. Cohen has for decades had close personal and professional relationships with many citizens of the former Soviet Union, because of the office in Brighton Beach, I guess, and just his upbringing. Anyway, he ended up as point man, I guess, on Trump's deals there, and also turned up in the notorious Russia dossier. That in scare quotes. He has routinely been described as an indispensable man to Donald Trump. One indicator of that, according to the New York Times, President Trump is more agitated by what those New York prosecutors may find in Cohen's files than he is by the wide-ranging investigation led by special counsel Robert Mueller into him. Cohen, it seems, may hold some crucial secrets. What's more surprising, perhaps, is the path he took to get to that point. Now, the juicy stuff. Michael Cohen grew up in the Five Towns area of Long Island, New York, a heavily Jewish enclave, heavily Italian as well, I would add. His father was a surgeon, according to media reports, and Cohen enjoyed a top-tier education, graduating from the private Lawrence Woodmere Academy, then moving on to American University. From there, it seems, Cohen's educational trajectory turned in a different direction. He attended the Thomas M. Cooley School of Law in Michigan, which InsideHigherEd.com once wrote, quote, is known for admitting students other law schools would not touch. Wow, that's very harsh. It must be pretty damn true, because, I guess you can't really write that about a law school, which is presumably full of lawyers, unless you're pretty sure you can win the defamation suit that might be coming. In 1992, after law school, he returned to his home region and landed a job working for a personal injury attorney named Melvin Estrin, who had an office on Lower Broadway in Manhattan. Estrin was the first in a series of colleagues who would run afoul of authorities within 3 years of Cohen's arrival. Maybe he's the problem. Estrin was charged with bribing insurance adjusters to inflate damage estimates and expedite claims. He later pleaded guilty. Cohen was never implicated in any of the misdeeds. Estrin did not respond to a request for comment. He is, though, still practicing law. Cohen continued to use Estrin's address on legal filings as late as 1999, but he added several new addresses during this period, including 22-05 43rd Avenue in Long Island City, Queens. That's the taxi garage. It was the headquarters of the New York branch of the empire of Simon Garber, a Soviet emigre who also had cab companies in Chicago and, where else? Moscow. Charismatic and silver-haired, Garber released kitschy TV-style advertisements in Russian for his company. They are herein linked. I don't know what makes them TV style, but maybe whatever. Anyway, over the years, Garber has been convicted of assault in New York, arrested for battery in Miami, pleaded guilty in New Jersey to charges of criminal mischief involving him breaking into 3 neighbors' homes, shattering glass doors, smearing blood all over, and taking a shower. He likes to keep himself neat. That's good. In Chicago, his taxi fleet included wrecked vehicles with illegally laundered titles, a way of cutting corners and cheating your customers and being unsafe for less. Garber did not respond to a request for comment. 2 other attorneys had offices inside Garber's office in the early 2000s as well. One was forced to resign from the bar after he was accused of not turning money over to a client. The other was disbarred in part for trying to steal money from the first lawyer. I can't breathe. In 1994, Cohen married Laura Schusterman, who was born in the Soviet Union. Her father, also a taxi entrepreneur, that's great, pleaded guilty to a felony, conspiracy to defraud the IRS the year before. Darn it, I hate when that happens. By the late 1990s, records show, Cohen had begun acquiring taxi medallions. We've talked about them. Licenses required by the city of New York to operate a yellow cab. The number of medallions has been strictly controlled for decades. Before the advent of services like Uber, they were particularly valuable, with their price peaking at over $1 million in 2014. Cohen co-owned some of the medallions with his wife, and indeed, his family and business relationships sometimes overlapped. Filings show his father-in-law once made a loan to Garber, and in 2001, Cohen borrowed money for one of his taxi companies, Golden Child Cab Corp. Interesting. From one of the men convicted with Cohen's father-in-law, Filma Schusterman, in the fraud against the IRS. Why not? Starting around 2000, Cohen was involved in scores of car insurance lawsuits, often on behalf of plaintiffs who claimed to have been injured in auto collisions and were seeking judgments to cover purported medical expenses. Wink, wink. At this time, a wave of staged auto accidents involving immigrants from the former Soviet Union who claimed to have been hurt had led prosecutors to open a massive investigation. They dubbed it Operation Boris, which they say is actually an acronym for Big Organized Russian Insurance Scam. Cute. The prosecutorial push resulted in hundreds of convictions. Cohen also drew up incorporation papers for at least 3 medical practices and 3 medical billing companies. One company Cohen registered in 2002, Avex Medical Care PRC, sued insurance companies nearly 300 times. The plaintiff's lawyer in almost all of these cases was David Katz, who was disbarred later for professional misconduct. The Midas touch this guy has. The doctor who owned Avex was charged in 2003 with criminal insurance fraud connected with another medical business. That charge dismissed. He's now practicing medicine in New Jersey. Great. Dr. Jana Kanevsky, the principal of Life Quality Medical, a clinic business that Cohen incorporated in 2002, surrendered her medical license after pleading guilty to writing phony prescriptions for 100,000 oxycodone and other pills. There's your opioid problem. Michael Cohen was on it. Not on the opioids. I mean, he might have been also, but he was on the creation of the problem in the New York area. Once again, Cohen never charged. Maybe Felix Sater was teaching him how to avoid charges at that point. In the early 2000s, Trump and Cohen became connected, fittingly, through real estate. Cohen started to transfer the wealth he'd gained from taxi medallions and insurance lawsuits to apartments in Trump buildings. A great way to launder your money, as we know, for Russians and also for Americans with lots of Russian friends who probably told him, yeah, you should be laundering that stuff, and I know a place you can do it. Trump buildings. Along with his parents, his in-laws, and Simon Garber, Cohen acquired 8 units in Trump Palace, Trump Park Avenue, and Trump World Plaza. The man who operated out of a Queens taxi garage now owned apartments alongside the likes of Sophia Loren and Harrison Ford. Moving up in the world. He didn't live there, but he owned them, and he could make a profit with them later. Cohen also began to show political ambitions. In 2003, he ran for city council on Manhattan's Upper East Side as a Republican. Even people close to his campaign weren't sure why he ran. His own campaign biography provided few answers, or rather, disparate ones. He claimed at the time to own 200 taxi medallions, to be a member of the Friars Club, an avid stamp collector, and a member of the Metropolitan Transit Authority's Inspector General Advisory Board. Was he? I don't know. It's a hint that he wasn't, but okay. Cohen lost the city council race, but his donor list provides a snapshot of his network. He received contributions from his father, his father-in-law, and Bruce Winston, a son of the jeweler Harry Winston. A New York Republican with knowledge of Cohen's 2003 campaign said Cohen told him that he was Harry Winston's in-house counsel at the time. The company says Cohen was never an employee. Court papers show that probably would happen. I'm a taxi and medical insurance fraud lawyer in Queens. And also Harry Winston's in-house counsel. Sure, why not? Court papers show Cohen was one of the lawyers who helped Bruce Winston and his daughter, Stephanie Winston Wolkoff. I remember that name. In a legal action challenging Deutsche Bank's, I remember that name, conduct as trustee of Harry Winston's estate. Their petition failed. For her part, Wolkoff, a friend of Melania Trump's, pardon me, later became the highest paid contractor for Donald Trump's inauguration. The big slush fund for which you don't have to report anything, taking in an eye-popping $26 million and sparking a backlash. But that's not what we're here to talk about. It's unclear when Cohen and Trump first met, but the two were publicly linked in February of 2007. The New York Post published an article about an attorney who was purchasing large numbers of apartments in Trump buildings. Trump properties are solid investments, Cohen told the Post. Trump returned the compliment, declaring Cohen to be a wise investor. Michael Cohen has a great insight into the real estate market. He bought 8 apartments. I mean, this is what, and supposedly the biggest player in New York real estate in American history has this to say. A guy bought 8 apartments. He's got a great insight into the real estate market. He told the Post, he is invested in my buildings because he likes to make money. And he does. 3 months later, Cohen became an executive vice president at the Trump Organization, with the same job title as Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric Trump. By the way, what a gut punch to Donald Trump Jr. A guy bought 8 apartments with taxi medallion money, and now he's an executive vice president. That's it. I mean, that's what Armando was texting me about right up front, saying, look, what the big highlight in here is how do Cohen and Trump meet? How does it come to be that Trump is more concerned about the raid on Cohen's home and office than what's going on with him and Mueller? How does he come to trust this guy so implicitly? How does this guy get on TV challenging CNN anchors about says who and all of that stuff? How do they meet? He bought a bunch of apartments and said, I love Donald Trump apartments because they're great investments. Oh my God, he said something nice about me. This guy is a genius. I don't care what law school he went. I want this guy hired. I want him now. I want him to outrank my children. No, Dad, you can't. All right, fine. Equal in rank to my children. He's the child I never had. But you have 19 children, Dad. You acknowledge at this point 3 of them, but there's 2 more coming. All right, and well, then another one with the housekeeper at World Tower. Okay, just putting that out there. Cohen was never a traditional in-house lawyer for Trump. He has been described as both a fixer and a deal maker, and it seems he embraced both roles. He did jobs for Donald that no one else would do, said one person who worked with Cohen, especially not a lawyer. He did a lot of those jobs because a lawyer would say, no, I can't do that. I'll be disbarred. To which Cohen said, my law practice is not worth that much money. It's certainly not as worth as much money as you're paying me to do illegal things, so I'll do those instead. Still, even after Cohen had joined the Trump Organization, he harbored personal political dreams. In 2010, Cohen mounted a second unsuccessful campaign, this time for the New York State Senate. Oh, that he could fit in with. Among his donors in that race were shipping magnate Oleg Mitnick, who sounds American, and tobacco tycoon and New York real estate man Howard Lorber, one of Donald Trump's closest friends. I haven't heard that name. Cohen continued to expand his role within the Trump universe. It had become simultaneously global, national, and highly local. Interestingly, the Trump Organization's business model had shifted from building high-end Manhattan properties to scoping for international licensing deals, particularly in the former Soviet Union. Cohen, along with Trump's adult children, headed up this effort. At a Trump Tower press conference in early 2011, Cohen took the public stage as an international deal maker. 7 months ago, at the request of a dear friend of mine from Georgia, the other Georgia, the dear friend not being, Bubba, it's Georgi, oh my goodness, Ritskiladze, I'm going to guess that pronunciation. At his request, I traveled to the Republic of Georgia to explore several real estate opportunities on behalf of Mr. Trump, Cohen said in his unmistakable Long Island accent. I should have been doing that one. He then introduced Trump to the then president of Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili. The ostensible purpose of the press conference was to talk up a planned tower in the city of Batumi on the Black Sea coast. But most of the questions centered on Donald Trump's possible run for president. Months earlier, Michael Cohen had helped set up a website called ShouldTrumpRun.com with the Long Island law firm Gerstmann, Schwartz, and Malito. David Schwartz is a longtime Cohen friend and attorney who made several television appearances on Cohen's behalf when the Stormy Daniels news broke. Cohen also traveled to Iowa to explore the political terrain. ShouldTrumpRun.com was billed as independent of Trump. Very independent. His executive vice president did it. Otherwise, Trump would have had to file papers with the FEC on his own behalf, and he doesn't read paper. At the press conference, Trump was peppered with political questions. Could you comment on the kind of feedback or what you took from the feedback from Mr. Cohen's Iowa trip? One reporter asked. Could you ask Mr. Cohen? He says, you could ask Mr. Cohen. You could speak to him, Trump replied. Good answer. But she pressed, are you encouraged by anything that you saw or read out of that? Trump couldn't resist. Well, he said, the response has been amazing, actually. There was no response. Another response. A complaint was filed with the FEC alleging Trump had accepted, quote, excessive or impermissible contributions from the Trump Organization, LLC, because ShouldTrumpRun.com was set up by an employee, Michael Cohen. Trump and Cohen were cleared of wrongdoing. They shouldn't have been, but they were. One of the two commissioners who signed off on the ruling was Donald McGahn. McGahn later became Trump's White House counsel. There's another piece of the public work that Cohen was involved in that further shows the close links among Trump, Cohen, and the attorney David Schwartz. During the same time period of the Georgia deal and ShouldTrumpRun.com, Schwartz and Cohen were both working on a project called Trump on the Ocean. Should have been in the ocean, but Trump on the Ocean, which aimed to construct a massive catering hall in the popular Jones Beach State Park on Long Island. Ooh, that's not going to be popular. Trump was so keen on this project that, unusually, even for him, he called 4 governors and a state comptroller to lobby for it, according to former state officials. In at least one of the calls, he cited the generous donations as a reason to get the clearances he needed to move forward. He's very blunt about that. Trump put Cohen in charge of the negotiations, but some state officials balked at what they saw as an attempt to commercialize a state park, and Trump's insistence that the state override its fire code so he could build a kitchen in the basement. Because very well built, there's never any fires in Trump buildings. The lobbying was contentious, said Judith Enck, the top environmental advisor for Governors Eliot Spitzer, not a sterling name at this point, and David Patterson, and later the chief of the Environmental Protection Agency for the New York region, who was involved in the negotiations. That was not a typical discussion with a business that was trying to do business with the state of New York. It was aggressive, Enck said. There were efforts to go around me and to get a better outcome in the discussion. I recall it as, one of the most unpleasant experiences I had in the governor's office. Misery, perhaps, for a government official, but triumph for Trump, Cohen, and Schwartz. They got permission to begin construction. Great job, Trump wrote in a note to Schwartz. I will hire your firm again. Alas, it was all for naught. In the end, hooray, actually. Months later, the tale of Superstorm Sandy inundated Jones Beach, and Trump walked away from the project. Okay, Joan McCarter giving me the flag here says, I'm calling in, but I don't want to get in the way of the Cohen story. So let's see how much longer it goes on. It is kind of exciting and interesting. We can all talk about it together. Hi, Joan.
Hi.
How you doing? This is pretty good, juicy stuff here. Let me take a quick look here and see. Yeah, all right. No further guidance about anything particularly juicy that we've missed here. Let's continue on for just a little bit. just for fun. 3 years later, when Trump made his run for the White House, Cohen continued to serve as both promoter and deal maker. He frequently appeared on TV as a Trump surrogate. We all remember that. Though he had no official campaign position. In one interview in the summer of 2016, Cohen refused to acknowledge that polls strongly favored Hillary Clinton. We all remember that's the Says Who appearance. Cohen's truculent tendencies were also on display a year before when he threatened Daily Beast reporter Tim Mack. Mack, M-A-K, had resurfaced an old accusation made by Donald Trump's first wife, Ivana, you remember this one, that during the divorce proceedings that Donald Trump had raped her, a allegation she later withdrew. But this was the confrontation that Cohen had, saying, I'm warning you, tread very effing lightly, because what I'm going to do to you is going to be effing disgusting. That still makes me laugh out loud, that one. But we all remember that. And then, of course, he went on to appear in the media saying it's a stupid allegation because everybody knows legally you can't rape your wife. And then everybody said that kind of went out in the 1800s and it's not true legally anymore. And he said, oh, yeah, law. Sorry about that. Behind the scenes, Cohen was still attempting to make deals for Trump in the former Soviet Union. Cohen drafted a letter of intent with a Moscow investment company to build Trump World Tower Moscow. That, of course, something he did in partnership with Felix Sater and the Agalarovs, who later hosted the Miss Universe pageant there in Moscow. And then later set up the Trump Tower meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and others and Natalia Veselnitskaya to talk about something other than Russian adoptions and maybe all the stolen emails from Hillary Clinton's account. Just, the trajectory of Michael Cohen here. His partner in that deal, as they mentioned in Moscow, Felix Sater, a Trump associate who had been convicted of assault and securities fraud and had widely reported connections to the Russian mob. Let's make this happen and build a Trump Moscow, Sater wrote to in an email to Cohen, and possibly fix relations between the countries by showing everyone commerce and business are much better and more practical than politics. And that really became the heart of Trump's approach to Russia, his philosophy such as it is, which is if I just have a good relationship with Putin, we'll both make lots of money and that will lead to peace, as opposed to massive corruption and the bankrupting of both of the countries. Well, I think at this point I'll call a close to the reading of this thing. And you get basically the best part of this one was, the guy who is that close to the president of the United States earned his way to the position by paying Donald Trump as much money as he could afford to gather, is essentially it. I bought apartments. I went in with others to invest in apartments in Trump Tower. And how many do you have to buy in order to attract the notice of the biggest, most fantastic, beautiful, and amazing world-class developer in the world, Donald Trump? 8. That's it. 8 apartments will get you. You know what? You're my executive vice president. For a guy who says if you're still convinced, if you're listening to this show and you're still convinced that he's got a global empire, you're not listening to the show. In fact, I forbid you from listening anymore, because it's pretty obvious. This is how the actuality is a sad and petty scrambler, hustler, who, pastes together enough gold leaf to make it look like he's doing something real. And, for a billionaire, really, 8 apartments is going to get you an executive vice president position in the Trump organization. I think you need to rethink what's really bad. The Mr. Successful Businessman. We've explained it to you. It's all an illusion from The Apprentice. But I don't know. So far, America has bought it. I find that amazing. Hi, Joan. We're of course, now we face our break. But I don't know. I'm glad you gave me a chance to read a little bit more of that. But I feel bad about having eaten most of your segment. Can we hang on for a bit, and then I guess we'll shift gears, unless you have something else to add to the Mike Cohen story, or you just want to laugh about it.
I just want to laugh about it. We have other things,
permissible.
Well.
Okay.
We have things, Kagro.
Excellent. Those are the best way to build a program full of things, is to bring a grab bag of them and then offer them up one at a time, and then we call it a show. Okay, well, I appreciate the opportunity to read a little bit more about that. This guy is really amazing, but is not necessarily the only source of idiocy and corruption in the United States government. There's an entire branch helping out with that. Maybe we'll catch up with what they're doing after this break. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support.
Yeah.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. We've managed to convince Joan to stick around, and I promise I'll give you a chance to talk when we get back. And so let's take that opportunity now. Sorry, Joan, but I know you were interested in the story too.
Fascinated by the story.
It's amazing how dirty they really are, and really, isn't it amazing how little it really takes to find yourself, one, in Donald Trump's orbit, and two, unfortunately now somebody accidentally made him president of the United States. So that means, you're operating at like top levels in government, talking to the people that actually run the place. And all it took was, I said, well, I mean,
being kind of comfortable with larceny.
Well, yeah.
Larceny. That's
essentially
what it takes.
I guess so. It's, on the one hand, the American dream. All you got is scrape together your savings and watch your pennies, and you can buy your way into fame and fortune. But I guess
with taxi medallions.
Yeah. On the other hand, are we kidding? Is that really, maybe that is the American dream, and it's just okay, you did it with, I don't know, the last Republican president did it with wildcat oil drilling. Okay.
And the Supreme Court.
Yeah, right. And so all it takes is one surprise curveball, whether it's the Supreme Court or fake news, and the failed grifter that barely kept his head above water is, you know what? You're the most powerful person in the world. You're white, right? Yes. Okay. Okay. Good. You're the most powerful person in the world. You are a man. Yes. Yes. Good. All right. That's the 2 criteria. Go for it. Anybody else, you go to jail. Or we threaten you with it. Anyway, didn't want to go back into that story necessarily, but it is shocking.
It is shocking. It's this guy.
Yeah, that's right. We're all Long Islanders this morning. This guy over here. Anyway, there's over in the what supposedly, old style government, old America, like old Europe, we still have a Congress, and
we still have a Congress.
They seem to be running around looking at books and trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing, which is comforting. It's nice to see people in spectacles looking at books.
I mean, we've got the Freedom Caucus deciding that they're going to extort Kevin McCarthy over his bid to be Speaker.
That's good.
Yeah. And going back to the idea that they have been promised that the House would make Mitch McConnell do their bidding.
Oh, good. That is a good idea.
So they're not really reading the books. They're still not really understanding how this works. Or just refuse to accept that this is how it works.
I see.
They're still mad that Paul Ryan didn't make Mitch McConnell pass their bills.
Oh, all right. Well, that's an ongoing ambition in the House. It's nice to see them stay traditional in that sense, but
yeah,
not
and
that
until
the bills
they promise him that again. Anyway, so that's happening on the House side. On the Senate side, they are doing something really, really, really insidious.
Oh, fun. But
Pat Toomey's idea.
Pat Toomey, okay.
They have decided that the Congressional Review Act, which we've talked about before, the thing that allows Congress to undo federal regulations within 60 days of them being promulgated.
Yes,
right?
Right.
So we've talked about this before. They went on a CRA binge last year in Congress, undoing Obama-era regulations.
It was all they could do.
It was all they could do because it was in that 60-day window. They just got rid of the ones that were most recent. But now, thanks to Pat Toomey, who's done some digging around, they've decided that they can use the CRA to get rid of not just rules, but guidances, which are not quite the same thing as a rule. They're not published in the Federal Register. The agencies use guidances because it's an easier process.
Okay.
There's less administrative burden in trying to issue a guidance, but they still have weight. Like the one that the Senate's voting to get rid of today from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that said auto lenders can't discriminate against people of color, can't defraud people of color.
Oh. Well,
the Senate doesn't like that one.
No?
Senate Republicans don't like that one, so they're voting to get rid of it today, even though it's from 2013.
So
because they've decided if something was a guidance, they can get the General Accounting Office. No, it's not that anymore.
Yeah, they changed the name of the
Accountability Office or something. Anyway, they can get the GAO to deem it not an actual rule, and then that resets the clock on the 60 days. The GAO's determination is what restarts the clock on Congress being able to get rid of it.
I see. Well,
They can go back to stuff from the Clinton era if they want to.
I guess they could go anywhere.
They could go anywhere to get rid of these federal guidances that agencies have been operating under.
I guess
and just say, poof, they're gone.
Why not have the current heads of the agencies rescind the guidance or issue a new one?
Because that takes too long?
Oh.
I don't
have to have a
because
comment period.
Then
maybe,
the Senate doesn't get to vote on it.
No. Now that may be
say, look what we did. We voted on getting rid of these burdensome regulations.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. They probably just say, why? There's no point in giving political points to the secretary or head of the agency. They're not running for anything. We are. So help us out. Huh? Okay. Well, I mean, it's a thought.
But, this is sort of Merrick Garland level of reinterpreting what the Senate is supposed to be doing, what the Senate's allowed to do. They're allowed to do whatever Mitch McConnell says, basically.
Does the parliamentarian have anything to say in this and say you can't use the CRA procedure unless it's a rule? Or are they saying, well, you could say that, but we'll kill you?
Parliamentarian, I don't know if Democrats are even aware enough that this is going on to ask the parliamentarian for guidance on this.
Okay. Well, good morning, the Senate Democrats. I hope you're listening. Joan will, you've probably read it at this point at Daily Kos. That's actually a pretty good bet, but I guess no word yet from anybody.
No word yet. And last I heard, Joe Manchin was thinking, yeah, okay, that's a good idea.
Well, maybe you don't want to ask him. That's not, well,
so let auto lenders discriminate against people of color. Yeah, great idea.
Right.
Let's do that again.
That sounds terrific. Because why would we want people buying automobiles in this country? I mean, I don't know. It's an environmental issue. People could say, oh, this is great. Except, well, okay, but shouldn't that be distributed equally? Oh, yeah. definitely don't want to do that. I guess in West Virginia they don't mind much because so few people of color live there, and what the hell? Well, discriminate. I don't know how you justify that. They must have some. Pat, I don't know. Is Pat Toomey involved in this particular?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
What does he care?
his.
Why? What is he? What
Because
is his
they hate the
justification?
CFPB. Because Elizabeth Warren.
Okay.
I
I
guess.
understand there are people of color in Pennsylvania. I've seen them. They talk to me all the time. They're not going to be happy with their senator on that. But I guess he
Yeah,
doesn't
but Pat
care.
Toomey was reelected in 2016, so he doesn't have to worry about it for a few years.
I think that's a mistake. And I think a lot of those people are going to continue to live in Pennsylvania. But okay.
I think so.
Yeah. And we'll have to get together and talk about this. But we have to wait a few years on Pat Toomey. Well, I wonder if he's got any sort of justification, like something fake worked up, like, oh yeah, but it's costing consumers so much money. I assume there's some crap like that.
No. I
just-
mean, they've been working on this very quietly, apparently, for a while, and
I'd
just
stay
sprung
quiet
it.
too if I was discriminating.
As
this way.
Mitch McConnell is wont to do. This just sort of came out of nowhere. He said, "Okay, tomorrow this is what we're voting on."
Huh. Okay. Well, that seems an odd choice. Very bad.
It does.
All right. Well, we'll hope they wake up to the idea that it's perhaps challengeable on procedural grounds if they hope to avoid. I guess you filibuster it and then they overrule your filibuster by pointing to the CRA
No,
and you say
because
no.
it's coming up as a CRA.
Yeah, but then you say, but this doesn't.
It can't be filibustered.
If it were
Simple
actually a
majority
rule,
vote.
yeah, I guess they must have had some kind of ruling somewhere then from somebody that this fits under the CRA procedure. Now, it can't just. I mean, why not just say it's a reconciliation bill?
Well,
and
actually,
do
they
that?
already had the motion to proceed on it yesterday, and it passed. So
Okay.
it's too late for that.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, they've proceeded on it. I guess at some point you can just. I don't know. I'm not certain what kind of. What sort of atmosphere there would be or what opportunity there would be to simply refuse to yield the floor and then say, no, you said this was coming under the Congressional Review Act, but it doesn't fit. This isn't a rule, and it's from 2013. This is an invalid assertion of the CRA procedure. You're wrong, and I guess at that point they say, I think I'd like to table that objection, that motion. Okay, and then a bare majority being necessary to do that, I suppose they can move on from there. But I'm curious to see what the parliamentarian would have to say about, like I said, why not just pretend it's a reconciliation
but we only
bill?
have an hour and 20 minutes to find out. The vote's at
well,
noon.
yes. Well, then in that case, we are in trouble, aren't we? Okay. Well, It's a live program. Any of you know senators? Give them a call.
I'd recommend so, particularly if you're in West Virginia.
Yeah. And you find out that your Democratic senator is just happy to be there and voting on making it legal to defraud you in your automobile purchase and your loans if you happen to be the wrong color. Well, that's Republicans for you. And Joe Manchin. Hi-oh. Damn. Okay.
Fun times.
Yeah.
Speaking of fun times, we had the balanced budget amendment in the House last week.
Yes. Armando was curious about that. I didn't even notice that they did it. So that must
They
mean
did it,
something.
and they failed,
Okay.
which we knew they would,
Good for you.
because, it was only for show and to give them more opportunity to talk about how much we have to get rid of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid,
Yes. All
which
right.
Paul Ryan is still talking about, even though Paul Ryan is retiring.
Yes. He's not gone yet. As much as I'd
No,
like to
and
push
that's
him out.
kind of a problem for
them.
some people in the House, including Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. He seems to be annoyed about it.
They want him gone now. They don't want a lame duck. Paul Ryan wants to be a lame duck. He's being very forceful in
Wants
the
a lot of
fact that
things.
he's still raising money.
Okay.
I don't know why he's so intent on sticking around now that he said he's going.
Yeah. Why not go work out?
Yeah.
I
You
don't know.
know, go spend the time with your kids now.
Sure. They are, alive now, right? He's already
Yeah.
got them. Okay.
Yeah.
So excellent.
You know, he doesn't want to be a part-time dad. Well, here's your chance, Paul.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I think that the timing had a lot to do with the fact that he thinks there's a possibility he would be defeated in his House race.
Yeah.
And I think that he's also hanging on until Wisconsin Republicans come up with somebody other than a white supremacist to run for his seat.
Okay. That would be responsible of him, but whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I assume he just likes the trappings of office and being asked questions about important issues, although they keep asking him about Donald Trump and he hates that.
Yeah.
He likes getting driven around places and he wouldn't have that. He wants
He
to go
got
out
to
in
go to
style.
Prague,
Did
which is kind of interesting. Yeah. He went to Prague over the spring recess.
he? Yeah. Did he see Michael
Yeah.
Cohen?
See, this is what I want to know. Who did he talk to in Prague?
And why did they receive him? I heard you were out, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
curiouser and curiouser.
going on as many Codels as he can and racking up miles and going places that he wouldn't pay for himself later on. I guess. I mean, there is that possibility. He just wants to live the lifestyle a little while longer.
I don't understand.
Well,
Oh.
you're honest and you don't steal money from the government.
Soprano
So you
Resistor on Twitter hypothesizes that it's so he can get his pension when he has 3 full years of speaker salary. Yeah, that's
okay.
quite
Is
possible.
that
I
right?
mean, he's,
I don't
as
know what
much
the
as he
rules
hates
are.
government, he likes the system that's paying him.
Yes, that's the part of government he likes. When they send me checks, that's the part where like, okay. I mean,
He doesn't like the working part. None of them do, apparently. They have decided that this week they don't need any Thursday votes. It's unclear whether this is something that they've decided for the remainder of the session or whether it's just this week. But it looks like Thursday votes might be a thing of the past in the House.
yeah. Okay.
So they'll show up on Monday afternoon, do some stuff on Tuesday, do some stuff on Wednesday, probably get out by, say, 3, 4 o'clock on Wednesday.
Wow, an extra day.
Yeah.
Well, again, good work if you can find. I mean, not really work, I guess, really, but good
really work.
paycheck if you can find it. And it must just be peachy for them. They'll all be spending more time with their families, and maybe even starting new families with one another. I don't know.
All this free time, who knows?
Dangerous to leave these guys with more time with their families. All right. Well, that's a bit bizarre. Interesting. Matthew Rigdon's comment on the CRAs and guidance saying, maybe it's okay to let Republicans burn floor time on this thing, since probably Trump's people can just issue new guidance. They could have gone that direction. If they want to burn Senate time on it, I guess that's better than doing nominations, or nothing for that matter. So,
They'll do nominations too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they'll get around to that, but I guess for every minute they burn on, rescinding old guidance that they could do away with elsewhere in other ways, is a minute they don't spend on another nomination. But I don't know. That's a very
suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if to me, I say, well, all right, but every minute I spend challenging the validity of the procedure is a minute they don't spend on CRA and have to spend later instead of.
Yeah. See, that's it. Come on, Democrats, step up.
Why not? At this point, you should be looking for any way to challenge anything. And if there's no possible challenge, challenge it anyway and make them spend 15 minutes telling you that there's no possible way that you can challenge this. So, okay,
Why
fine.
there isn't at least one Democrat on the Senate floor at every given moment. They need to have somebody there permanently raising hell.
Yeah, it does. It gets to be exhausting, I'm sure, but you can rotate.
They need to stand up there and make Republicans answer uncomfortable questions.
Yes, or be seen not answering them, which...
Yes.
That's fine. That's the option they'll take, but go ahead and do it. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been super thrilled with the level of effort in the Senate with regard to, resistance and slowing things down. They did an admirable job in the beginning with nominations, and there's so many vacancies. You could say they've done well with it, although the Trump administration has shot themselves in the foot as much as anything else with this. But yeah, these things bother me. The fact that they continue to accept written communications from the president at all. Everybody still thinks that's kind of a crazy idea. But like I said, just I could burn 2 hours a day making them vote to make me shut up. That's fine.
Yeah, and they should be. But you probably have Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp and Joe Donnelly saying, no, you can't do that to us because we'll look bad. We'll look like we're resisting Trump.
Right. And then we won't be able to vote to make it harder for people of color to buy cars. Then where will we be?
Where will we be?
Better off, really. But okay. That's all right. That's rather amazing.
Let me just leave it saying at this moment, am not impressed with Senate Democratic leadership.
Yes. Well, it would be hard to convince yourself of that. Okay. Well, let's see. Anything else that we need to pick up on?
Armando in the notes does bring up something that I'd seen earlier and wanted to highlight. A tweet from Kyle Cheney, who is congressional reporter from something, I don't know, Politica. The 11 House Republicans who are calling on the Attorney General Sessions to prosecute, in no particular order, Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Sally Yates, Loretta Lynch, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Dana Puente.
Really? Dana? Wow.
Yeah.
Makes the list. I don't know who's Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Does it ring a bell?
They were the FBI agents who had the texts back and forth.
Okay.
About what was it about?
The secret plan.
Trump. They didn't making fun of Trump before the election.
Yeah, probably right. And I think those were the guys that were joking about, hey, we should implement the secret plan.
There, yes,
and
yes,
it was
Ron Johnson's famous secret plot.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's rather amazing. And so who's 11 House Republicans? I guess that tells you a little bit about it. There's quite a few more House Republicans than 11. Louis Gohmert and 10 others, I guess. Does they have a list? Yeah. All right. Here's a letter. I'll take a look. Well, would anybody take the bet about Louis Gohmert not being on there? I mean, that'd be foolish, don't you think?
Or rather, Steve King.
Oh, yeah. That's a good bet, too. Who else is really, really, really dumb?
Have quite a... David Bratt.
Paul
Gosar.
Ooh.
The Arizonan who is still mad that Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy didn't make Mitch McConnell vote on one of his bills.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yoho.
Knew there would be a Yoho signature on that. That's
Matt Gaetz, of course. David Bratt. Man, I'm really disappointed that Gohmert didn't make it onto this one.
Wow, I would have lost that bet. Someone would have collected. This is a very dumb collection of people, though, I must say.
Yeah.
Andy Harris. Isn't he the Maryland... Andy Harris, MD, right? He was what was it? Didn't he first come to our attention years ago, coming into Congress and saying, where's my government health care already?
Yes, that would be him.
Yeah, okay. Claudia Tenney, who I think is rising in her profile. I think I've seen people tweeting around like, "Hey, she might be the newest, dumbest member of Congress." I haven't read what it was.
Michelle Bachmann.
Yeah, I haven't read what she's done yet, but it sure seems like it must be dumb. This is a very backbench group for sure, though.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Okay, well, sorry, not too much to come of it, but the opportunity to point and laugh, and we take that very seriously. Too crazy for Gomer.
What else have we got, Kagro?
Man, I don't know. That seems to be about it. Although Armando tells me Tenney is the New York representative of the 20th district. So you got a goofball up there, New York 20. Be aware of it. And yeah, good comment.
Something about that.
Well, okay. The time is coming. I guess so.
Let's see if New York 20 made our list. No. Yes. New York 22.
Oh.
That's one of the districts we are targeting. And as it's the nominee fund, as soon as we have the primary and we have a candidate, we're in.
But she's that dumb, ladies and gentlemen.
She's that dumb. We're fundraising for a candidate that hasn't been determined yet.
Right. Bring us a circus clown. Doesn't matter. Step up. Did you say it was 22 then, the district?
Yeah.
Okay.
According to our spreadsheet from Daily Coast Elections, and I believe them. They're very good at this.
They're pretty good. And you wouldn't have to do much to double check anyway. But 22, that's all right. So Claudia Tenney. That's an interesting. What a collection of weirdos. I don't know. I don't know how you top that. I don't think there's anything crazier out there at the moment. But we sure had a good time trying to find it.
Be.
Oh yeah, it's not 11 yet. We got plenty of time. And yeah, all right. So good. She's on the target list. Excellent job picking out those targets, as always, over at the Daily Coast Elections crew. And bringing it to the, I guess, at that level when it comes to targeting and putting them on the list, rises above to the executive committee over there, or whatever we would call that collection of people willing to put their names on the line and pick our targets and put us out there. But I don't think you're going to go wrong in this case.
I don't think so.
All right.
I'm trying to think what else. There's an awful lot.
Yes.
To cover. Looping back, we talked about the other kind of rescissions last week. Mm-hmm. The rescissions of the spending bill.
Yes.
House Republicans, the appropriators, have said, no, absolutely, we're not doing this. The Senate has said, no, absolutely, we're not doing this. Kevin McCarthy and Mick Mulvaney and Donald Trump are still trying to do this. So that's still out there.
Okay, well, that'll keep Kevin busy for a little while.
I think Kevin really likes being Trump's guy.
Yeah.
Remember, he's the one who sorted through he had his staff sort through bags of Starburst.
Yes.
Just for the red and pink ones, because those are Trump's favorites.
Yeah, and you got to keep Trump happy when it comes to Starburst. I don't know.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, that's how he got to be his best buddy. That, and he gives him memos that have lots of pictures and graphs.
Okay. I mean, it made simpler things have made people executive vice presidents in the Trump organization before. So
absolutely.
Starburst could get you anything.
Apparently, McCarthy thinks that this is his path to the speakership.
Excellent. Why not govern that
Starburst to Trump. Yeah. So anyway,
burst of refreshing
rescission should not still be alive, but the White House is trying to make them still be alive, even though everybody says, including Mitch McConnell, no, we're not doing that.
All right. Well, yeah, I guess that's all I can. It's all we're going to be able to fit in today. But other than that, I mean, what do you envision your day being like beyond covering that? Who knows?
Whatever happens next.
Yeah, at this point, like I've excused myself from trying to predict.
We can't plan anymore, Kagro.
It's ridiculous. Why try? You're right. Why do anything? Why plan anything? Why have secretaries of state? Just go have secret meetings with North Koreans. Make the speaker the guy with the best Starburst and whatever else. Buy an apartment that Trump Tower if you like a job at the Trump Organization. That's all you need.
Or if you need to launder some money.
Yeah, right. Taxi medallion's probably outdated. You don't want to do that anymore in the age of Uber anyway. And now we just sit and wait for... is Trump still down in Florida, I guess, playing golf with the Japanese Prime Minister?
Yeah.
That's maybe a good thing.
He's golfing at the moment.
Okay. Well, have fun. He won't be rage tweeting for a while, and that's a good thing. And I wish we could sneak off and govern while that was happening, but they're not going to let us do that one either. But wow.
No such luck. There's nobody left in D.C. to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Joan, for volunteering your time to come and tell us what they're not doing and how they're cheating at the things that they're trying to do. And
you are welcome.
I appreciate it. All right, we'll catch up next week. We'll see if there's news. Otherwise, we'll just read good articles to each other and have a laugh.
That works too.
Okay.
Until next week.
Take care, Joan. All right. Time to wrap it up and hand the microphone over to Justice Putnam. He'll find things to tell you about. He's quite adept at that.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show.
With David Waldman.
All right, wow, what has he got here? Let's see, he'll be discussing Chuck Todd, who is apparently shocked that Fox News is standing by Hannity. I guess because Chuck Todd thinks there actually is news on Fox. And what a menu he's got lined up for you. Once again, I have eaten up all the time I usually dedicate to telling you about that, but that'll just keep it a surprise. Enjoy the show.